It's been the last time I delivered a message in this church, we were actually in our old building, which was beneath Diamonds in the old Julian's bar. I delivered a couple of messages in those days, but it's been a little while, and I really enjoyed serving in this church. That's really the way that I look at it. You know, this place for me is super meaningful. I mean, the amount of change that has occurred in my life since joining Sanctuary is just absolutely incredible. It's a miracle. And today's message is about reaching the lost. And I want to share with you maybe a different perspective on that. And a lot of it's going to come from my own experience. It's not necessarily going to be a testimony, but just know that I've struggled with addiction, alcoholism. I have a dysfunctional family. I come from a long line of ministers and missionaries and people, serving the Lord. My great grandfather R.E. Winsett won a Dove Award, which is like the biggest award for a gospel song, right? R.E. Winsett. If you go to any of the churches in the South, you'll probably see his hymnals in a lot of the Methodist and Baptist churches. And then my great-grandfather on my mom's side, James Earl, was also a preacher. Their daughter, Marilyn Winsett, she's a huge missionary and has a huge ministry in Tennessee. She's aging, but she's still every day she's working for the Lord. On my father's side, my great grandfather, or not my great grandfather, my grandfather was also a preacher. He was drafted into the war. I believe it was the Korean War, and then he preached in a Baptist church in Marion County. I mention those things because growing up in an alcoholic home, there was a lot of dysfunction, and people were hurt by the church. There was a lot of, I learned early on not to trust the church or Christians. It's a lot of, rules. It's a sin to play a stringed instrument in church. You can't go to the movies. Lots of things like that. And it was just I think a lot of churches and a lot of people in the church have this fear-based mentality that if you don't do these certain sets of things, that you're going to be condemned and you're going to go to hell. It's a fear-based culture. And that's kind of how I grew up. My dad rebelled against that. My dad is a wonderful man, and the Lord works on him, and he knows the Lord, he's close to the Lord. But for a long time, especially before his recovery from alcoholism, he was very, very resentful of the church. Since joining Sanctuary, I came and I discovered a group of loving Christians, not fear-based Christians. And I had my reservations. I knew about God. I had spiritual beliefs, but I did not have a personal relationship with the Lord. And this is 10 years into my recovery with alcoholism. So I had participated in, and I still do, in recovery programs. And I had worked on myself, to try to overcome some of those hurdles. But I still did not. I had a lot of head knowledge and concepts, but that didn't really speak to my heart, and it did not change the way that I felt in my heart. And just know that Sanctuary has just been a super meaningful place for me. It's been 10 years, roughly 10 years since I've joined Sanctuary, and I've been a part of Robert. And so I come, into this church now on the premise of really reaching the lost and to serve, and how can I be of use to others, right? So, just a little bit about background and how I got involved in sanctuary for those who don't know me. But I thought about how to reach the lost. And this is actually the title that Evan was going to give on the service today. He was originally going to deliver the message. And the first thing I thought about was, we talk a lot about reaching the lost, and we have lots of frameworks, programs, small groups, directions, inspirations, lots of things that we talk about reaching others, making disciples, going out and multiplying, right? We hear that a lot in church. But I wanted to take kind of a step back and think about maybe some of the things that we don't discuss that often about reaching the lost. So one of those would be how not to reach the lost. How many people here already have their minds going where I'm fixing to go? Right? I kind of shared a little bit about my background, my history, some of what I grew up in, some of what I saw from the church. And we have these stereotypical Christians that we see on the TV and on the news. And this is what people who aren't believers and who haven't discovered God within their own heart, within their own mind, this is what they see. I can remember going to a Pink Floyd concert when I was 18. Okay? And there being people on boxes, standing out with megaphones, talking about how we're all going to go to hell. Sign me up for that. What about, when you go down the street corner and you see people holding up signs that says, God hates gays. These are the Christians that are ruining the message of God. They are ruining what Jesus displayed every day in his life. And it breaks my heart. I was kept away from the church by these people. Okay? We go through life, and every one of us has ideas or philosophies or theological positions. Every one of us. And when we go promoting a lot of these ideas, feeling like we can take this on ourselves, we are putting an image out there. It's human nature to want to be accepted and to belong. It is so deep-seated. We do things in this world to place ourselves in a tribe. Hopefully the tribe of people that, think like we do, or believe like we do, or act like we do. We do that because we want to validate our points of view, the way that we think, and the way that we act. Advertising those positions, a lot of times, to people who aren't in the tribe that we have placed ourselves in, can be offensive. And you say, well, I don't think like that. That's not how I believe. I don't want anything to do with that. I think you're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. That's not an invitation. If you look at the way that Jesus lived his life, he went to all places and became all things to all people. He did not go to the people who thought like he did as a Jew and believed like he did as a Jew. He went to the people who were broken and specifically sought out those that did not think like he did or believe like he did, and he invited them in a loving way. And he showed them by loving on them. I think about this in the context like this. Let me kind of take a step back here and demonstrate what I'm saying. A lot of times we feel like we want to stand up for what we believe in. And we may be right, or maybe we're not right. Maybe we don't understand the purpose that God has in store for this. Okay? But when we get on Facebook, when we make those comments that we think resonate with the majority of people, how many people out there are listening and watching that think, oh, no. And now you want to try to reach this person, and you've already pushed them away. Maybe it's something you really feel convicted about, and you feel like you are justified in righteousness to take this position. Maybe you wear a t-shirt that proudly displays this position. But to the rest of the people who don't share this position, it screams baby killers. Aren't those the very people that we're trying to reach? How about if somebody came to me when I came to Sanctuary and said, "You're a drunk, woman-abusing, liar, and a thief"? I think I probably would have got up and left. Have you ever gotten to know somebody that you really thought, man, I love this guy. Everything he says is so on point. He's so inspiring. I love the word that he shares. I like the way that he, communicates and how he is just so personal and has so much character. And you got to know this person, and you really start putting this person on pedestal. And then one day, you're scrolling through social media, and there's the post. Some divisive, offensive comment they made on something completely unrelated to whatever. And it all comes crashing down. How many people has that happened in here? Let me just see a show of hands. How many people in here have really thought, I really like this person, somebody you really looked up to, and then you saw something on social media that said, yeah. Let's look at James 1:26-27. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: look to the orphans and the widows in their distress, and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Another translation says that we seek out homeless, the widows, and the needy, and then we love on those. Isn't that what Jesus demonstrated? Isn't that reaching the lost? This deep desire. I tell you this right now, even in this moment, I recognize, before I got up here, and even now, the anxiousness and the deep-seated fear that is just seeping through me because I want to be accepted by you delivering this message, right? There's a deep-seated desire to be accepted by others and to belong. And that's a desire of the flesh. But this is not useful to God. Sometimes maybe we have to go a different way than what the norm is and what our culture tells us to do. What we think others might accept us for. We have to push that desire to belong and to be accepted aside and maybe take a different path. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the only way you're going to get there is by connecting yourself to the Lord and shutting out all of the divisive politics, the media, social media, the norms, being accepted. All of these things that we go through our lives, the materialism, the jealousy, all of these things that distract us from being useful to God. You know, God is all powerful. He created everything. We overlook the fact that He created the earth and the heavens and the mountains and the seas, the animals. He created us in His own likeness. We take these things for granted because we see them every day. And we acknowledge that, we all acknowledge in here that God is all powerful, right? Probably a lot more powerful than us. Yet we think we can change the world and right all the brokenness in this planet, this broken world that is part of God's plan. It's supposed to be broken, okay? We think we can right all of this. We can take the power from God. We are so powerful that our Facebook post is going to fix all of that. That is dishonoring God. That is grieving God. In Corinthians, it says, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. That comes from Isaiah 29:14. You see it on the screen. Therefore, once more, I will astound these people with wonder upon wonder. The wisdom of the wise will perish. The intelligent of the intelligent will vanish. What is it? Let's talk about that wonder upon wonder. The way Jesus lived his life. What did they do in Acts? What did him and the disciples, the apostles? They went healing the sick, tending to the poor, tending to the lost, giving what they had, encouraging, loving. These are all the things that they did. Wonder upon wonder. People were healed from sicknesses. Demons were cast out. In this modern culture, we don't think that's possible anymore. But our Facebook will change the world. The Message translation states it like this. Okay, same verse, but I love this translation. It won't be on the screen. These people make a big show out of saying the right thing, but their hearts aren't in it. Because they act like they're worshiping me, but they don't mean it. I'm going to step in and shock them away, astonish them, stand them on their ears. The wise ones who had it all figured out will be exposed as fools. The smart people who thought they knew everything will turn out to know nothing. Think about who is silently watching us. We're talking about we're still on how not to reach the lost. Who is silently watching? We interact with so many people. So many people read what we put online. So many people observe how we treat others, even in our own families. We may have an agnostic spouse that has a preconceived notion of Christianity and some of the judgment and the condemnation that we talked about. And what better way to demonstrate God's true love to be disciplined and connected with the Lord and consistently demonstrating love, acceptance, tolerance, grace, encouragement, guiding people to know the Lord. You know, we all make mistakes. We all say things that we don't mean to say sometimes. And maybe we get excited about some controversial or divisive topic, and we say something about it, and we participate in it. That's worldly, earthly stuff, okay? But let's just draw the line right to the conclusion of that. Somebody's watching that is struggling. They're dealing with issues, and they are seeking something to help them get past that. And then we do that, back to that Facebook post. Don't listen to Eric. See? He's just a hypocrite. He voted for so-and-so. I can't get along with that. Or look at the anger and frustration he just demonstrated. And he preaches about love. See? Told you he's just a hypocrite. Don't listen to that. That's the enemy whispering in their ears. Warren Buffett said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. Okay. So I've talked a lot about what not to do. You probably guess what's coming now. What do we do? Eric, what you just talked about seems, does it not seem impossible? I mean, hey, who in here has not done things that probably in hindsight you might regret? I still do them to this day. I'm probably going to do one here on this stage. I want to hear, this is going to be participation. I want everybody, I'm going to ask you a question and participate. Just give me one word that comes to mind. What do you find attractive? Keep them coming. Integrity. Honesty. Humility. What's that? Compassion. Truth. Love, confidence, selflessness, success. Loyalty. Is God attractive? I'm thinking about this, I was thinking about this earlier, and I'm like, who could possibly say that God is not attractive? I mean, you don't even have to be a follower of Christ, right? Like every painting, picture, idol, whatever, people's concept of this supreme being is always somebody that's super attractive. Not only physically, but intellectually and emotionally. Spiritually, right? You remember a few minutes ago, I said God created us in His likeness. Genesis 1, I believe it's chapter 26, or verse 26. Genesis 1, first chapter, Genesis 1:26. He created us in His likeness. Think about that for a second. We are intended to be attractive. I'm a firm believer in attraction rather than promotion. If I want to reach the lost, maybe I should focus on being attractive to the lost. If I separate myself from God, I might not be as attractive. I'm just going to say, when I was furthest from God in my life, I can pretty much guarantee you I was the least attractive that I could possibly be. Our job is to incorporate Jesus into our daily lives. That's how we reach the lost. He demonstrated it for us. You read the stories, we hear about them every Sunday. If you want a shortcut, get a Bible with the red words and just read the red words. Those are all the words that Jesus spoke. Titus 3:9 through 11 says, avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and arguments and quarrels about the law, because these are unprofitable and useless. Warn a divisive person once, and then warn them a second time. After that, have nothing to do with them. You may be sure that such people are warped and sinful. They are self-condemned. We live in a broken world today. Let's face it. How many people in here think that times today, that there's more controversy, more divisiveness, more political polarization, wars, famine, right? It could be easy to think that it is more. I'm not convinced. We have a lot of information available to us now. We got 24-hour news, we got the internet, we got people who are just trying to get as many likes and many page hits and as much viral coverage with their videos and news stories. And its information is instantaneous, it's everywhere. But think about in the Roman times, in Jesus' culture, okay? You had the elite, you had the Pharisees, you had the Romans, then you had the common people who felt oppressed. They were waiting for Jesus to come along, a Savior, to take their political point of view and to fight. They thought it was going to be a war. That they were going to fight the right or left, I don't know what side you call it, the other side, okay? And this is what they thought was going to happen. Jesus didn't take a position in that. The position he took was not right or left. It was up. Right? And this ticked off the Pharisees. It ticked them off. They wanted to kill him because he wouldn't side with their earthly position. He wouldn't help them with their political motivations. Maybe we should take a clue from that. Rise above this world. That's exactly what Jesus modeled for us. Second Timothy. Join me in suffering like a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No one serving as a soldier gets entangled in civilian affairs, but rather tries to please his commanding officer. Who are we fighting for? If we're to reach the lost, that is the war. Maybe we focus on our commanding officer. And anything that is not purposeful in that endeavor, we push aside. So that takes us to a disciple. Right? You hear this word a lot, disciple. And I was looking at this word, and just thinking about what kind of connotations it brings into my mind. You hear it a lot. And I'll be honest with you. Sometimes when I hear the word disciple, it's like it kind of takes me back to that legalistic Christian point of view, because they said that word a lot. So then I started looking at how close disciple is to discipline. Have any of you ever thought about that? I haven't. I'll be honest with you. I never really thought about disciple and discipline. Let's see. I've got a little etymology to share. Disciple comes from Latin, discere, which means learn. Okay. gel with that. Learn. To me, that is a more positive connotation. If I try to fix my work view of this word that has been tossed around forever, it's learn, right? And that translates into discipleless, learner, or disciple, learner, right? Look, the word discipline comes from exactly the same place. Discipleless, learner. Disciplina, instruction or knowledge. Now, there are some definitions of discipline, such as noun equals punishment. Sometimes we think about discipline in that context. Or we can think about it in the noun context of, activity or experience that provides mental training. Or verb, train oneself to do something in a controlled or habitual way. The reason why I mention this is because if we are to multiply and we are to be disciples who are making disciples, then all that really means is that we're learning, we're learners, okay? And we're disciplined in our approach to participating in that activity to learn and do it with others. God wants us to be free from slavery of sin, free from the brokenness of this world. And if you want God to validate the Word, and really, if you want Him to anoint the message that you're about to deliver, He will speak through Grant, and Grant will come up with this verse in our pre-prayer time. 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews I became like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. It's a lot of stuff. What does it really mean? It means that Paul is saying, hey, I'm not participating in the controversies, and I'm not going to get into a debate about it. If this is what you think and what you believe, I will honor that in your presence. And we're going to pray together. I'm going to love on you and encourage you. And I'm going to demonstrate God's love to you. And the Lord will speak to you in His way, in a relationship that is personal to you, and lay on your heart what He wants you to work on and put those convictions in you. That's what's going to happen. I'm not going to get in the way of that because I am just a man. I am not an all-powerful God. That's what that means. I am all things to all people. So, it's a little bit about what I think about, how to reach others. We'll sum all this up at the end, which is kind of soon. But I want to talk a second about why. I think about how, in my own life, I really, eventually, obviously, I became a believer and I really started focusing on my spiritual life and my relationship with God. And, there's a lot to receive there. But a lot of times we think about, reaching others, we're kind of instructed to do this, to reach the lost, to make disciples, to multiply. And it seems like a big burden sometimes. I mean, some people would become naturally. They're all excited and energized by it, right? But I don't think that's everybody. I don't think it's really the majority of us, right? And a lot of times we hear in church, the reason why you do that is because your reward in heaven will be great. Just trust me, when you get there, it's all going to be worth it. Yeah, but I'm going through this divorce right now, and I just can't deal with it. You know what? I've just suffered this immense loss in my life. My loved one died, and I'm just in so much pain. I can't even think about discipling somebody else. I can't even think about reaching the lost. I'm lost. Or, what about, you know what? I've had 2 abortions. I don't feel worthy. I'm the biggest sinner of all. What can I possibly give somebody else? You know that Paul was a murderer, right? On the road to Damascus, he was struck down and spoken to by the Lord, blinded. He had a spiritual awakening. We'll say that, right? I mean, I think a lot of you are familiar with the story. And the change was so profound in him that others didn't even believe it at first. They were scared to death of him. They were going to be stoned or hauled off to prison. But he used that testimony to reach the lost. If you have sinned in your life and you don't feel worthy, that is the enemy speaking to you. I already showed you where in the book it says we're created in God's likeness. Your image in the Lord is beautiful. Okay? You have a lot to offer. God put those sins and those things in your life, those struggles, to help you overcome, to increase your dependence on Him, and so that you could, by the power of your testimony, reach the lost. Does that mean you go out on a street corner and you evangelize and get on a box? I don't know. Ask the Lord. Maybe it just means you get to know people. You have somebody over for dinner. And because you're an attractive person that says, hey, there's something different about you. Can you tell me about that? Well, sure. I used to be an alcoholic. Went through multiple marriages. I was mean and hateful to others. I couldn't stand people. But then I discovered the love of God. And He gave me compassion. And He showed me what it was to love. God, thank you so much for this gift of love. I feel like I'm overflowing with it to the point that I have to share it with others. The Lord answers the prayer and puts a beautiful woman into your life. And I'll be honest with you, this is a true story. That prayer happened. The answer to the prayer came. And every single day for over 6 years, it's been like a honeymoon. That's not me. I just told you I had multiple failed marriages, that I was an alcoholic, that I was selfish to the core. That's a testimony to the Lord. How do I reach the lost? By inviting people into my life and sharing what I have learned, disciple, with somebody else. I'll learn. And we do it together. God's gift to us is the healing, the confidence, and the self-worth, sense of accomplishments, value, making a difference we get from helping others. I've given you the reward right here and now. I mean, who's with me? Right? You don't have to think about it from some far-off thing that's tangible that maybe somebody else told you you're going to get. It does say in the book, pray about it. The Lord will answer that prayer. But I'm telling you right here and right now, you are struggling with things that the only way out of that struggle is to share that with somebody else and it gets outside of yourself, encourage somebody, and you learn together. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. We are simply inviting someone into our relationship with the Lord to share what we have learned, okay, and disciple, learn. When I was going through probably one of the roughest periods of my life, this is in sobriety, going through a divorce, I was discipled. This woman's name was Yvonne. She worked with me. She saw that I was struggling. She said, let's go to lunch. We went to lunch. She asked me to share about it, what was going on. And from that day forward, for a solid year, she went to lunch with me every day. She didn't tell me what to do. She didn't give me commands or condemnation. You know what she did? She just listened to me, loved on me, encouraged me, told me things that would get better. She would share a little verse here and there about things that were meaningful in her own life and context, sharing her learnings. Eventually, one day, she gave me a Bible, and she put a nice little card in it. Basically, it said, everything that I know about this life came from this book. And I think now is a really good time for you to have a copy of it. That process took a year. To this day, the reason why I tell this short little story, I mean, I think I already shared with you that I was discipled and I overcame things and where I'm at right now. But the reason why I tell you this is, to this day, this has been over 10 years, okay? And to this day, she shares with me that period in her life was when she has felt the closest to God in her entire life. And she is married to a preacher. They live at a church in rural Kentucky and live mission every day. That's the fruit. I'm going to read you one more verse, Galatians 5:22. But what happens when we live God's way, He brings gifts into our lives. And notice I've underlined a few things here, okay? Gifts into our lives. Much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. Things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity. We develop a willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, and a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way into life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely, not needing to force our way in life, not needing to force our way in life. Legalism is helpless in bringing this about. It only gets in the way. Among those who belong to Christ, everything connected with getting our own way and our mindless responding to what everyone else calls necessity is killed off for good, crucified. Since this is the kind of life we have chosen, a life in the Spirit, let us make sure that we do not just hold on to it as an idea in our own hearts or as a sentiment in our hearts, but work out its implications in every detail of our lives. Every detail of our lives. That means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better than another or another worse. We have far more interesting things to do with our lives. Each of us is an original. It's all about the fruit. God wants us to be fruitful. We get to share in the harvest. Bearing fruit is profitable for everyone. I like fruit. Don't y'all cherries, watermelon, strawberries, peaches. All good. Let's have that last slide up. This is it. Discipling is as simple as embracing the life of the Spirit, God's love. As we learn, we invite others into our lives, love others, and share in the fruit, our inheritance.